pen to write down questions. You love the most unlovable part of me. Only.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to another Relationships Reloaded here at the Hanson Place Church. I have to confess a little bit, I'm slightly off. I was about to say Kingsborough Temple because that's my home church. But I am glad that you all are here with us tonight. I get a chance to be your host. So for those of you that are watching, we're glad that you're here. If we have anybody that is visiting, just put where you're from in the chat. It's always fun to see those of you that are viewing on Facebook, those of you that are viewing on YouTube, just to see where you're from. If you're just right here in Brooklyn, then, just shout out your neighborhood. I'm here in Crown Heights, but we just want to see where you're from. Just want to take a minute to welcome you all. I am so excited to be a part of today's conversation because today we're going to be talking about stand your ground. And no, not gun laws, but stand your ground, success outside the church. So I have this amazing group of entrepreneurs, visionaries, creative individuals that are here with me today. And we're going to be talking about what it means to have a non-traditional career, specifically a non-traditional career from the church's perspective. So when you do something that is not as common as being, a teacher, a doctor, a nurse, a lawyer, even like an architect, engineer, those types of things. But when you really are following God's leadings and are using your gifts and your talents in amazing, creative ways. So we're going to be talking about that tonight, and I'm really excited. So we look forward to your comments. We're hoping that by the end of this, those of you, no matter what stage you are at in life, if there's a passion that God has placed on your heart, that you will get some inspiration to go out there and do it, try it, whether it's a full-blown business or just a side hustle or something, that you do just in terms of volunteering. But we really want you to be encouraged and empowered to use the gifts and talents that God has given you to be a benefit and a blessing to the world, because that's what he's called us to do as believers. I tell everybody all the time, if God did not like variety, there would only be one flower, one kind of bird, one type of grass, one kind of tree, but obviously just by looking at nature, we know that God loves variety. He loves colors. He loves differences. So there's space for us in the body of Christ to walk to the beat of a different drum. As long as we're still in the body, there is room for your uniqueness and your gifting. So we are glad. I'm looking through the comments here. All right. The Andersons, give a shout out to Pastor Sean Anderson. friend, one of my colleagues. He is watching with us, and I see other people, Fanny, Sherry, Opal. Glad that you all are tuning in with us. So without further ado, we're going to jump into this conversation. But first, I want all of the panelists to introduce themselves, because nobody can tell you better about their own business and passion project than the individuals themselves. So we'll start with the man that is amongst us. We'll start with Anthony Hackett, and then we will move on to the ladies.
What's up, y'all? Thank you, Amanda. Dang, you good at this. I didn't know. Okay. You hosting tonight, girl. Look, I just want to say hello. Thank you for allowing me to join the conversation tonight. I'm Anthony Hackett. I'm the CEO and founder of Sunset Friday Entertainment. We are an award-winning faith-based production company that has designed content specifically to help people enjoy Sunset Friday, when sunset's on Friday. Beyond that, we create just faith-based films, whether it's feature films, short films, documentary films. We also do YouTube, as well as live events, and just myself individually as a speaker at various churches and things. So that's the gist of it, man. Just blessed to be here.
All right. Thank you so much, Anthony. Let's move to Micaiah Greenidge. Tell us what you do.
Hello, everybody. Happy Sabbath. My name is Micaiah Greenidge, and I am the CEO and founder of Micaiah on the Main. It is a hair business that I started about 3 years ago. I'm only 19, so I started pretty young. And it's been growing, and I'm thankful for where it's headed.
All right, awesome. I did not realize that you were that young and that you started that young. That is awesome. So we're glad that you are here with us. And then last but certainly not least, we have Asha Boston.
Hi, everyone. So first, if y'all could send a few prayers up for my internet connection, that would be great. It's a little shaky today, but happy Sabbath, everyone. My name's Asha Boston, and I'm a filmmaker, and I'm also the founder of a nonprofit organization called The Dinner Table, and we work to empower and inspire young women of color ages 11 through 18.
All right. All right. So I encourage all of you all to find them on social media. They're on Instagram, they're on Facebook, and really check out some of the things that they've done. I know, Anthony, you have some stuff on YouTube. Asha, I think you may have some stuff on YouTube, because both of them they've done, film and those types of things, but quality products. Please follow them, like, subscribe, rate, review, purchase when the sun goes down, all of that, so we can support all of these entrepreneurs and their business, what they've done. But let's go ahead and jump into the questions. So one of the things that is always interesting to me is when I talk to creative individuals, I like to know, when did you start to feel the pull to do something different? When was that moment where you realized, maybe the traditional 9 to 5 or the traditional, high school, undergrad, graduate school, work a job until I retire? When did you realize that that's not the best fit for me? So we're going to jump to you first, Asha.
Sure. Well, I liken my experience into entrepreneurship to the story of Jonah, because it's something that I very much ran away from when I understood that this is what I could do. It was my senior year of college, and everyone around me was either applying for a full-time job or applying to grad school. And I knew that that's what I was supposed to do, but I didn't feel pulled to do it. I really was trying to understand, where I fit in the larger picture, and what would happen, once I graduate. And it was a journey, because I had like a small senior thesis project that I worked on, my first film, a documentary called The Dinner Table. And at that time, I was just really passionate about creating multidimensional narratives and stories for women of color. And again, it was just a film, and it was kind of all that I had at that time, but I was so obsessed with making it work that it was something that I very much preyed on. And even when I graduated and a few months later started working in my first job, I felt like everything just kept coming back to this film, the dinner table. And then I finally just kind of had to pray a prayer of surrender, like, okay, Lord, like, like you do what it is that you want me to do with this. And it just really turned into a much larger thing than what I thought it would be initially.
Okay. Micaiah, how about you? When did you start to feel this pull to do something different?
So I would say that I felt this pull well, I was still in high school, and I knew that college was coming, and I was having a lot of difficulty with deciding where I wanted to go to school and what I wanted to major in, especially since like all my life I've been telling myself I was going to be a doctor. From I was like 5, I knew I wanted to be a doctor. But then it's like I reached the age where it was time to go and begin that track, and I didn't want to do it. So in all that like battling conflict with myself, beauty hair was a constant. Like people would always ask me, oh, can you do this for me? Can you show me how you do this? And so that was really a constant for me. So as I got better and people kept telling me how good I was at it, I just decided that I'll still figure out what I'm gonna do, but while I'm figuring things out, I'm gonna do this and build and see where it takes me.
Okay, that's awesome. I think you said something that's really powerful, and it's something that kind of resonates with me. A lot of times you have this story, this narrative, and sometimes you even tell it to yourself. It's not even other people projecting it on you. It's this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. But without even realizing it, there's something that's the constant in the background, so for you, it was hair and beauty, cosmetics, like it was always something that you were interested in. And I'm learning that we need to pay attention to those things, because sometimes, that can be where, real passion and joy can be found. And because it's something that you've always liked to do, oh, this is just a hobby, this is something I do for fun, but my real thing is something different. But it's key for us to not overlook those things that are always in the background, those things that we always come back to, because sometimes, you can really find gold there. So thank you for sharing that. And Anthony, how about you? When did you start feeling that draw?
Well, first I gotta say Micaiah's hair is dope, and I don't know if y'all seen that shirt. She got this shirt that's fire too. God is dope. See that? So I just want to shout that out, because anytime we can shout out God is dope, we gotta acknowledge that. But yeah, so for me, like being an entrepreneur was built in me, and anyone who's an entrepreneur, you're an entrepreneur not because you wanted to be. You're an entrepreneur because it's inside of you. Like it's inside of you. Some people run from it, but you can't run from it. You know what I'm talking about? Like it's in you. So even when I was 9 years old, Amanda, I went out. I took all my mom's stuffed animals out of her bedroom, and she was at work. I went outside. I was 9 years old. I went outside, took all our stuffed animals. I went outside. I set up a table, and I put all the stuffed animals on the table, and I put on sale for $2. And so at 9 years old, I was trying to sell my mom's stuffed animals for $2. Then she came home, and mind you, I didn't think there was nothing wrong with it. I thought I was cool. She came home. She was like, "What in the world are you doing? Get my freaking stuffed animals and put them upstairs. Go back in the house before you get beat." So I had to take all the stuffed animals and put it back in the house. But from that day, you want to know when it started? From 9 years old, I was born and bred to be an entrepreneur. And then from that point, it was just about God leading me to the exact direction of what type of entrepreneurship I should be doing.
So I think it's funny that you said stuffed animals. When I was 5, I took all of my stuffed animals and I would line them up on my bed, and I would reenact church from beginning to end every Friday night. That was my Sabbath opening ritual. And my parents joke, and they're like, "We should have known then, that you were going to be a minister? Because like, what kid like plays church alone? Like, I've seen kids play church with other kids, where it's like one that's like, we're going to play church. I'm going to baptize you. You're going to sing. I'm going to preach. You're going to collect offering. But no, this was me by myself. I would do the entire worship service from beginning to end. I would preach to my, my Care Bears were the most sanctified Care Bears ever because they got a word every week, and I just think it's funny that, kids use what's around them. So the fact that you took stuffed animals and were like, listen, I'm gonna make some money, like they probably just sitting on a bed or on a sofa somewhere. I'm gonna use these. But a friend of mine, she has this, unofficial theory, but she says that if you can remember what you played in your free time as a kid, that usually that's kind of where your heart is. So, Anthony, for you to say like, it's in you when you're an entrepreneur, like it's in you, I imagine Micaiah, you probably, your dolls, their hair probably look good. You probably brushing it or maybe not, cause I burned some of my Barbie doll's hair cause I wanted to curl it. And I didn't know that it would shrink, but her theory is that what you play, what you imagine as a kid is kind of like there's something about that. And usually you don't stray too far from that, if you're really following your heart in terms of a career. So for all of our viewers, I don't know, maybe put that in the comment. What did you play with as a kid? Like, let's kind of do a test run of this theory. So if, I don't know, Pastor Anderson, did you preach to toys when you were a kid? Whatever, what other careers you all have, put in the comments, if you played, acted that out in play in some way, shape, or form as a kid.
Well, hey, put a disclaimer on that though, because some people was playing some things they shouldn't have been playing. So
we're not talking about house, okay? We're not talking about house.
I'm talking about anything because I was doing some gangster stuff with my Ninja Turtles, so I wasn't. It's not always.
Yeah, well, I mean, yes. Thank you, Anthony. You're right.
Disclaimer.
So keep it appropriate. We don't want to know. We don't want to know everything, but we just want to see. Pastor Anderson, he commented. He said, "I'm here trying to figure out what I played with." So I don't know, but I think I think that's a good point. So the next question that I want to ask you all is: so as you began branching out, being creative, doing something different, who were your biggest supporters and who were your biggest critics? And I'll just open it up. Whoever wants to answer first, you can jump in.
So I'll go first. I would say that my biggest supporter has been my mom because she's never really put me in a box when it came to my occupation. I was always good at school, so she knew I was gonna get somewhere. So that was one thing that was the main person who like influenced my growth. And my biggest critic, honestly, has been myself because I've learned at this point that comparing myself to other people will get me nowhere because I'm in my own lane, I'm doing my own thing, and nobody can do what I'm doing the way I'm doing it. So a lot of the conflicts that I am approached with or I reach are self-inflicted. So yeah.
Man, that's powerful right there. Knowing you're in your own lane and no one can do what you do the way you do it. That's powerful. Asha, Anthony, who were your critics? Who were your supporters?
I would say that my biggest supporters were my friends and, like she shared, my mom. Prior to becoming an entrepreneur, I got my start in journalism when I was about 16. And because I was super passionate about, just going for what it is that I wanted to do, they already knew from the example that I set that, whatever it is that I want to do, that I'll more than likely be successful in it because I'm very passionate. And so they were my biggest supporters and my biggest critics. I can't say it was like one person or one group of people, but I would definitely say that it was people who were afraid of chasing their own dreams or had never had the opportunity to do that. So they project their fears onto me by saying like, do you think that's possible? Do you think, and like, at one point it did get to me, but it just kind of took talking to my friends and my mom and my sisters about what it is I do, and them reminding me, like, look at what you've already done to, you know, help me snap back and keep pursuing my dream.
Yeah. Wow. Anthony.
So my biggest supporters, three part is my mom, and my sister. I would say she's my older sister, Sheena, and my mom. They've been my biggest supporters. But then that also then entered into my wife. So when I got married, and even before we got married, my wife also became that other biggest supporter. So it was three big support systems: my sister, my mom, my wife. My biggest critics has been the church, like by far, like hands down. The church, people within the church, I've gotten more criticism from the very community that I minister to, more than the world. So the church.
Wow. Now let me ask you this, Anthony, because I know you're award winning, so you've had some major successes and have been able to network and work with some significant people in the film industry. So as you grew and as God blessed and gave you favor, did the stance of again, the church, speaking generally here, did you feel that they were beginning to accept you a little bit more because you were really showing that this isn't just some hobby, or do you think you're still at the same kind of resistance that you were initially?
That's a good question. So absolutely, stances have changed. And that's weird because it's not weird. That's just the way society works. Unfortunately, you have to gain acknowledgement and respect from people outside of the church before the church will see it. And it's so weird that's how it works. Within my business, that may not be the same for everyone, but within my business, you're not respected or acknowledged until people outside of the church respect and acknowledge you. And when they see that, they're like, oh, wow, okay, now come speak at our church. You come do this and that. When you didn't get that same type of, respect and everything else prior to that. So unfortunately, that's the way it works. And it is what it is. But yeah, it did change once God began to show some favor. Things changed.
Yeah. Now this, again, I want to open this up to everybody. So why do you think that is? Because, I've seen that just with, colleagues, friends of mine, who have done something different, something where, let's be honest, guarding and keeping the Sabbath may be a little challenging. My sister, she has a master's degree in vocal performance and pedagogy, and she performs. And so, early on, she had to make a decision, and, she had several discussions with my parents in terms of what keeping the Sabbath meant for her, and knowing that if she wanted to, go far, there was only, there were going to be times where she was going to have to perform on a Friday night, or perform, on a matinee, event on Sabbath. And so, what does that mean for her? And I know when you begin to do something where you're maybe around people where alcohol is being served, you're not consuming it, but it's there, and you're beginning to connect with people that clearly do not have values that align with the church. People can really try and push you out of those spaces. And so I want to ask you all, why do you think the church is hesitant, to immediately accept? Because too often the experience that you had, Anthony, is what happens. It's almost like after you prove yourself, then they're like, oh, then you're our son, you're our daughter. We loved you all this time. I remember your first thing. And you're like, y'all weren't there. So why do you all think that the church is hesitant to immediately support different career paths and gifts?
I think that has to do with the culture of the church itself, like that specific church. But my personal experience, a lot of the people that I was raised around were West Indian or are West Indian. So it's like drilled into your mind that the proper occupations are doctor, lawyer, teacher, engineer, and things like that. So I kind of had to like train myself into the thought process that God can use me wherever I am, and not allow the thoughts of others to influence where I'm going, because we're all on our own journeys.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to agree 100%. I was writing down what my thoughts, and I'm like, it's two things. It's like culture and fear, you know, and fearing the things that you don't understand. And so I know for myself, you know, when I would start to talk about what it is that I do, I can't just say like, I'm a filmmaker. It's like, well, what does that mean? You know, and then I have to break down what that means and, like, you know, provide this comfort to the person that I'm talking to, you know, at my church, that it is a sustainable career and it is something that can be done, you know, because there's a difference in, you know, the opportunities that, you know, we've been afforded in this time. And so I definitely agree. I think it's a mixture of culture and fear.
Yeah. Yeah. Anthony, anything to add to that?
No, I think they said it beautifully. I'll let you move on. That's perfect.
Okay. Well, I do, before we move on, for those that are listening, again, not knowing where you are in your own personal journey, I think there's really something to be said for the amount of confidence that you have to have. Because, when you're dealing with other people's, and other people's insecurities, they will project them, on you. And, all three of you, are nodding, and have even, referenced it, where it's this, they didn't go after their dreams, or they weren't supported, and validated, so when they said, I don't want to be a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer, then it's like, oh, I sent you to school for nothing, and it's like, no, there's like all these other careers out there, that are sustainable and that are solid. And, when I look at the people that I know who are entrepreneurs, like, you really have to have more than tough skin. You have to have this like internal fortitude, and knowing that this is what I'm going to do. This is what God purposed for me. And whether you see it now or you see it later, I'm going to stay true to what it is that he's calling me to do. And, it is sad that, sometimes, the church as a whole, it takes us a while, to be supportive of that and to recognize that, and it is sad that you kind of have to get applause from outside of what should be considered your family, that we're late, to that dinner table, we're late to celebrating you. We're late to being like, man, you can get your start here. And that's something that by having these conversations, we're trying to spread awareness, to don't instantly, be against an idea because it's something new and it's something different.
May I say something, Amanda, real quick?
Absolutely.
So as I'm about to speak, I just want to put this out for anyone who's watching on Facebook or anywhere you're watching, wherever you're watching. Comment, what are the safe Adventist jobs? What are those jobs that, as an Adventist, they're safe? Like, just drop a job down there that says, "Oh, this is a safe job," because there's some jobs within the church. It's like, "Oh, this is a safe job." Like Adventist, you could be a teacher. There's nothing wrong with being a teacher. And what are some of those other safe jobs? But as they write that, I also want to say this. One piece of the puzzle is as to why there is hesitancy in some of these outside of the safe job things is because it's people's lack of a relationship with God, but rather their relationship with tradition, culture, and church. So people have a strong relationship. And again, I'm speaking generally. This obviously doesn't apply to everyone. But there's some people who have a strong relationship with church, with their culture, and with the traditions within their church. They have a strong relationship because they're hard on it. But when it comes to God, they're so strong in the relationship with those other pieces that their relationship with God is not as strong. It's not to say they don't have one. It's just to say that, unfortunately, those other relationships are proving higher than the relationship. So with that being said, the reason I'm saying that is because if your relationship with God outweighs your relationship with the tradition that you have within your church, then the opportunities that God can give you in a career path open. because you're operating in those career paths under your relationship with God and under that authority, as opposed to the authority of the church that you belong to. So I would just hope that people would strengthen their relationship with God more than they're strengthening or encouraging the relationship with the tradition of their church.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Go ahead, Micaiah.
That when you are realizing your purpose or stepping out on faith into whatever it is that you think God has placed in front of you, you're always going to be faced with more problems than you could have planned for. So with that, you can't just stop because something becomes too hard or becomes too difficult. So what I do is I say to myself, I know that God works miracles, right? So if he can work it out for anybody, why can't he do it for me? And so that basically just comes with what Anthony just said, that you have to trust in God and his path for your life, because what we're planning or our hopes and our dreams are not necessarily our own. They're given to us. So it's just a matter of sticking with it and following.
Yeah. No, and I think what you're both saying is so key, like to put some word on it. When you look at the church, the early church, the first church in the book of Acts, look at the challenges they went through when they finally were like, we need to start preaching to Gentiles. Because so much of the tradition, as you said, Anthony, so much of that tradition was, the word of God is given to us and it is for us. It is not for them. And so there was this, we're going to preach to other, Jewish individuals. We're going to preach to, our brothers and sisters. We're going to preach to our community. But then, Peter and Paul and others were like, but God is telling us to go preach to everyone. He's telling us to preach to all. And so there did have to become this point where they had to choose, am I going to be more faithful to tradition, which says just stay amongst, the Jewish community, or am I going to let my relationship, the leading that God is the leading that God is guiding me on, what he's telling me to do, I'm going to follow that. And if that means I'm breaking tradition under the leadership of God. So it wasn't just Peter's like, I'm going to do what I want to do. Paul, I'm going to do what I want to do. God was calling them. And, if you look through the book of Acts, they have some heated discussions, about that. What does that look like? What does that mean? What does that mean for our tradition, our way, our culture? And, Anthony, I think you spoke very powerfully to that, that as the church, what I hope conversations like this will do is that it will challenge us more, because you have to trust these individuals. So when they say God is leading me to do this, I'm not in their personal relationship. So I can't say, who am I to tell you, no, God did not tell you that. I'm not in your prayer closet, but really seeing that, this God who likes variety, this God who, works in and out of tradition. Tradition is nothing to God. He can work within it. He can work outside of it. It doesn't bind him. We need to make sure that we're encouraging people to really follow and pursue God. And part of that, I think, is just listening to individuals. We can sometimes cut people. So before I even hear about the film you want to make, Asha, as soon as you said filmmaker, I'm just like, no. And it's like, well, what is the film about? Her film could be, amazing. It could be something that, is pointing people to Christ. It may not be directly saying that, or it may even directly be saying that. But if I don't talk to you about it, I'll never know, if I'm just closed at the idea. So no, thank you. These are good, good points that you all are making. I'm seeing in the comments here, a lot of doctors, nurses, teachers, pastor, to answer your question, Anthony, social work, engineer, these are the safe careers. All right, let's continue on. So did you ever question if this was the path God had for you? And how did you overcome any doubts that you experienced?
I'll share. I still have doubts because I'm still young, so I still have doubts about just the hair, the beauty business, because in the back of my mind, I still think doctor, lawyer, engineer, because that's what's been drilled into my head all my life. Um, but another thing that also makes me like hinder my path a bit is the fact that I was good at school and I do like math and science and all those things. So I feel like I'm not using um like that part of my mind, and I don't want it to go to waste. So I think that really just comes to play, is going to come into play with like whatever other things I end up branching out into, because hair is not what I want to do for the rest of my life. I don't want to just, have a salon and be there every day. I want to go out, see the world, and I can do that through a lot of different mediums. And I'm good with my hands, so once I see something, I can pick it up quick. So I know that there's more than just hair for me in this life.
Yeah, yeah. Asha, how about you?
Being an entrepreneur is an everyday surrender to God's will, because you never know what's going to happen with every day that you encounter. You might think something is going to happen a certain way. You might prepare for something to happen a certain way. And then all of a sudden it goes completely left. And you have to have this crazy faith enough to be like, all right, God, like, let's do it. And like, when you decide you want to be an entrepreneur, the first 2 weeks it's like great, because you're like, yeah, I'm following my purpose. I'm doing what God has called me to do. And you're like, I got a curveball, God's got it. But then when you're like 3 months in, 4 months in, 2 years in, there are some days where you're like, what is this? And I find myself having to really kind of turn to scripture and reread a lot of the stories that I first encountered as a child in like children's story, and reading them now as an adult and learning and understanding them in a new way, and really understanding that you have to have this crazy faith in God and understands that he works in the midst of the impossible to make things possible. And just like he had this person in the past and that person in the past, and even this person that in the present, he's going to have you. So there are some days that are very hard. And then there are some days where I just have to like remind myself, like, no, like you are living in your purpose, and you're living in your purpose, because when you step back and look at how far he's brought you, it's not a small feat. But it's just remembering to surrender every day.
Mm-hmm.
As for me, no, I would say I never questioned if the path that I'm on is the path God had for me. There may have been a moment where I questioned about should I quit, but not necessarily is it the right path, like, which is why I never quit, because it is the right path. So yeah, I never really questioned, is it the right path? But sometimes as an entrepreneur, especially an entrepreneur within the filmmaking business or acting business, that type of thing, where it's very, very, very volatile up and down. You may think about, should I keep doing this? But it's never a what's the right path or not.
Yeah, yeah. So one of the things that I've heard, kind of indirectly with all three of your answers is this whole idea of being flexible. Because, sometimes our lives are not linear. So it's not always, I start here and then I just follow it, and then naturally I end up here. Sometimes you start here and then, you go up, or you go here, or you circle back, or then you're over here, down here, up there, and kind of back here and there, so how have you all experienced flexibility? And I especially want you all to speak to Micaiah, because, I think everybody can wrestle with, I'm doing something good now, but I know I don't want to do this forever. There's something else, that I want to do. So this flexibility and realizing, man, you may end up going to medical school, Micaiah, or you may not, or you may use your math and science to create the next hair care line, because that's math and science, like there's so many options. But speak to the need for flexibility when you're an entrepreneur.
So flexibility is essential because it's never going to work out how you plan it. So for me specifically, when I first started, I was not working in a salon. Nobody is hiring a 16-year-old to work in their salon. So I worked from home. I bought my travel kit and I would travel to people no matter how far they were. I was going because I needed the practice, I needed the clients, I needed all the things I could have gained. I needed it. And I knew I needed it. So I went out of my way to reach the goals that I was setting in front of me. And any obstacle that was there, I had to adapt, whether it was the train or anything. I just had to find a way to adapt because I needed to get to that person's house.
Yeah, yeah. Anthony, Asha, what do y'all think about flexibility?
I think flexibility comes with being very not excited about rejection, but learning that like a no or something not going the way that you planned initially is not the end of the road for you. And sometimes I find myself wondering, like, is this something that you learn over time or is it something that you're born with? Because there was a point that you shared earlier that when you talked about the things that you do when you're young, translating to, you know, how you kind of search for your career. And I know for myself, like, I always found a way to bounce back from something that would put me back or like become a challenge or an obstacle for me. And so I find that now, you know, in starting a business and having a business and sustaining a business, a lot of times, like, I'll apply for a grant or I'll apply for something else and I'll get rejected. And then I'm just like, oh, well, I got to figure out another way to get in, because if I can't get in through the door, then I can climb through the window. I can go through the back door. Like, I just try to find the optimism and all the different ways that I can make something work. And to kind of speak to a little bit of what Michaela was saying earlier with not seeing like how exactly like math or science might come in. Like, I'm like, oh girl, you're going to need that math to count that money and, you know, get all the business in order, because that comes back around. And then also the science, you know, just the science of hair. It's a technology. It's so complex. And so, you know, as you continue in the journey, all of the small things that you've learned along the way start to come back around and make sense in areas that you never would have imagined.
Yeah, yeah.
And I would just add to what both of them said is with regard to flexibility, you got to, as an entrepreneur, you have to be flexible. It's like no other option, because the world continuously shapes and moves and everything else. So, I mean, just look at this year. Like, what in the world? What kind of year is this? How you gotta be flexible. You gotta move and shake with it. Like, you just can't give up. You can't quit. You have to now adjust the way that you're operating. Look at churches now. We're not doing church the same as we did before. Churches are pretty much their own entrepreneurial playground. Because there's just so many different things that people are starting and doing in the churches. So, but you have to shape and move. So absolutely, flexibility is the key, because you don't really control anything that happens around you in this world. That's from things happening in your family, things happening in the people around you, things happening within your business, etc. So you have got to be able to shape and move. If you're the type of person that needs specific structure and pinpointing what's next, then being an entrepreneur might not be something for you. If that's the type of person you are, you have to be very willing to move with what's around you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, man, I know we're moving good in this conversation. I do want to encourage our viewers, if you have any questions, go ahead and drop it in the comment section, because I do want to take a couple questions from the audience before this time comes to an end. So any questions that you have for our panelists, go ahead and put that in there and we'll see about answering them. But in the meantime, one question I do want to ask you guys, many people are hesitant about, you know, the arts, fashion world, because there's a lot of influences and beliefs that are contrary to Adventism. So how do you stay connected and rooted and grounded to your faith?
So my number one way of staying rooted and grounded, I've been trained from a child that in all things God is present. So where 2 or 3 are gathered, God is right there. So I know that. So I wouldn't say that my occupation carries me far from God because God is always with me. So yeah, I wouldn't say that. I guess in the outside world, like if I were to be a celebrity stylist and I'm at their beck and call, then yeah, it may. But I know that when Friday night comes, I'm not working for anybody but God. I'm not doing it. I refuse. So I have that strict border that I will not cross.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I think you have to know who you are, and really know your relationship with Christ, and be strong and grounded in that. In going into like the entertainment or the fashion industry, when I worked in journalism, like I worked at so many different publications. I remember one time when it hit me that the impact that I was having was resonating, even when I wasn't saying anything. Was when I was interning at Vibe magazine. And I never like overtly said I was a Christian, but because I was so strong in my beliefs and I did not like bend and fold and drink and do all the other things people were doing, I would do the job that I was there to do, and I would be cordial to people and then go home. I remember one time I was there, and usually when like a famous like music artist comes in, like they start pulling out the drinks and like doing the most, and I'm just like, well, I'm gonna type this article. And I remember the artist comes to sit next to me and he's like, "You're a Christian." And I'm like, who told you that? But, we just ended up having a conversation, and turns out he was born, he wasn't born in Ventus, but he was raised Christian. And so, we just kind of talked about values and stuff like that. And, that was a really great reminder for me that wherever you go, you maintain your character, you stay strong in who you are, you don't compromise your beliefs for anyone. I don't think it's worth it, especially when you're so immersed in your purpose and God is taking you far. You have to kind of think a little bit like Esther, like you were born and placed in this space for a time like this. And when you stay true to who you are, God will see you through and grant you, what you need to survive. But you definitely have to stay strong and grounded in who you are.
Mm-hmm.
I keep reading this thing's muted. I would say, as far as staying rooted and grounded in your faith, as you're younger, like Micaiah, I know you was 19, girl. But as you're younger, you have roots in your faith. And then as you get older, the roots just continue to grow. It's like a tree. The older the tree gets, the deeper the roots go into the ground. So unfortunately, when you're younger and you get into an entertainment industry or fashion or music, your roots aren't as deep as you'd want them to be, or if they're your child, that you'd want your child to have them, because you just haven't gotten there yet. It comes with growth. It comes with time for you to get more grounded in your faith. So the difficulty as with younger people getting into these careers early is the ability for that tree to get knocked out because the roots aren't deep enough. So one huge way to stay grounded and rooted in your faith, especially as a younger person, is to have people around you that are rooted in their faith. Because if there's a tree that's not really rooted that well, but it's surrounded by the most gangster, deeply rooted trees, they're not even going to get to that tree. So it's important to have people around you that can walk with you, that are grounded in their faith, that can help you through your journey, because you will, especially in everyone in this feed right here, especially all of our career paths and businesses and things we have right now, it's easy to get knocked down. So you want to have people around you who are strong, like Pastor Amanda. You need people like her around.
Oh, I thought you, I didn't realize you.
Did you want me to keep lifting you up? Is that why you were crying? She was like,
No. I expected more names to come after mine. No,
I'm shouting you out.
I wasn't expecting my name to be the last. I was like, yeah, like who else? Like, No, but thank you all for sharing that. Because again, I think, as the church, realizing, that people have roots, and I think just collectively we have to grow in our ability to watch people go out into the world, because that is where God has called us to go. Whether, you go out through having a non-traditional career, or even if you have a traditional career, we're not supposed to be lights that, are hidden under a bushel, where I only do this at church, or I only hang out with other Adventists or other Christians. I only do this. We are called to go out. And, when I look at the career path that you all have chosen, you're able to reach people and talk to people who would never tune in to my church to listen to my sermon. Like I'm not going to meet them. It's almost like they'd meet you first, and then maybe from you, then maybe they'd come, to me. And so it's like we're all working towards the same goal, of being lights wherever we are placed. I did see one question in the comment. It came from Pastor Anderson. He wants to know, on average, how many hours do you have to put in per week as an entrepreneur?
All of them. Every hour, every single hour, every hour of every day. When you sleep, you entrepreneur, and you dreaming about what's next. So yeah, there's every hour.
Go again.
I was gonna say the exact. Because from the time I wake up, I work. By the time I go to sleep, I'm going to sleep after I work. So,
yeah. Asha, same with you.
Yeah, I would say it depends. I feel like when I first started my nonprofit organization, I was like 24/7. I wake up with an idea, I go to sleep with an idea. It's like that still sometimes. But for the nonprofit part of what I do, it's gotten to a place where I had to learn how to create the boundary and the balance, because I couldn't pour from an empty cup and I couldn't run on E. And I realized that when I was working around the clock all the time, trying to balance film and nonprofit, that I was becoming very exhausted and I wasn't giving my best self to my business. So at first it was like all in, all hours in, but now I'm in a new phase where I'm like, okay, these are my hours and this is the time that I absolutely cut off, because I have to go to sleep, because if I do not go to sleep, I cannot wake up and write coherent sentences. So
yeah,
I'm in that one, because me, I go to sleep, I wake up, I'm like, time to work. I'm definitely learning that one.
Yeah. And it's true. I think, when you have ideas, so I'm beginning to experience all of this because I started my own independent ministry. And even to call it that feels like I'm saying it's way more than what it actually is. That's more like me speaking into the future. But, shameless plug here, AmandaHawley.com. But I wanted to create just a platform, a place for me to launch my own ideas in terms of ministry, that was separate from my church, so I could just have more control and more of a say over it. This is what I want to do. This is what, what I want to put out, to the world. And so even with that, it's like I'm beginning to, now I'm kind of like in that I have a full-time job, and then now I have this, I guess I don't want to call it a side hustle because it's not profitable, but this side project, that I'm working on. And so it's like I am now starting to have to really put in some boundaries, like, okay, 3 hours, a day, I'm going to plan out, what is the next thing that Amanda Hawley Ministries is going to do. And then still make sure, that I'm doing, my job / other, because it's all ministry, but, making sure, that I'm pastoring my church well. And so having to put those checks in places, between church and, just the things that I want to do. Oh, thank you, Anthony. My brain is like going. So I'm beginning to live that, hopefully, entrepreneurship life. We have a few more minutes. If anybody else has questions, because I have a million questions, but I want to involve our viewers. if they have any questions. But as we're waiting for some more, I do have one more question. Where do you want to be in 10 years?
I hate that question. I'll start. I hate that question. I gotta be honest with you. I've always heard that question, like, where do you see yourself in 5 years, or where do you want to be in 10 years and stuff. I don't know. Because the reason why I don't know is because I just know what I want to do now. Like I know what I'm called to do now. I know what I want to do now, and whatever God does with that, He does it. And so I don't know, and I don't know if that's probably the most horrible answer someone could have. Maybe you should know in 10 years where you want to be. But for me, it's not about where I want to be in 10 years. It's about what is God calling me to do now, and I'm gonna just do it and see what happens from there. So that's just me personally.
So let me rephrase it this way. What's the next step? Because I know for me, when I think of, because sometimes I'm like, I have no idea where I'm going to be in 10 years. 10 years ago, I never would have guessed that I'd be here. So I could be in a completely unfathomable place in 10 years. So, and if that's easier for you other ladies, what's the next step, for you, your business?
Got you.
I kind of,
Go ahead.
I kind of love that question because in 10 years, I really hope to be doing what I'm doing now, but in a more even better level than where I am right now. So like with my nonprofit organization, we service girls here in New York, but I'm like, in 10 years, I want to service girls across America. So that would be great if I can continue to do this and like, watch it become even bigger than what it is. And then like with my films, I'm like, I'm just working on one, kind of documentary project, but in 10 years, it'd be cool to work on more. So in the next 10 years, I'm hoping that all the seeds that are being planted right now continue to grow into like these huge trees that, will continue to like pollinate and flourish and, bless whoever is encountering them.
Yes, I definitely agree. 10 years. I hope that I'll be able to, harvest something that I've planted. But other than that, like, I do hope to have a lot of stylists working for me. I hope to have a couple of beauty locations along the East Coast. I have a lot of hopes. I hope to be surrounded by like-minded people and not have that feeling constantly of like, am I doing enough? Or like that comparative thing in the back of my mind. And I do want to start my own nonprofit. I started a draft, but I'm not ready to begin yet. But that's what I hope for.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like you need to have some conversations with Asha offline on nonprofit, how to enter into that field. Well, listen, family, I thank you guys for sharing some of your journey with us, for having, this good conversation. I do just want to go back. The teacher in me is like, let's just review some key takeaways, because we can be a part of stuff, but we can miss the learning. I believe that learning comes from reflection. It's in that pausing and that reviewing that learning can take place. So some of the key things that you all shared that stood out to me is really being rooted and grounded in this is what God has called me to do. Because at some point in time, you're going to interact with people that will project their own fears and their insecurities on you. So anybody who's viewing this, this idea that you have, kind of gird up your loins, because, you may, and that critique, it may come from the church, it may come from outside, but, prepare yourself so you can kind of tease apart, okay, this is their fear. This is, their projection on me. It's not the determining factor in terms of me moving forward. They talked about flexibility. Flexibility is key. So it starts off one way and it may work, it may not go well. You may have to retweak, but being flexible as well. a statement that I'll always remember. I loved Micaiah. You said it. Nobody can do what you can do like you can do it. So I posted on my Instagram a picture of a whole shelf of tomato sauce. I mean, think about it. Every time you go to the grocery store, it's a whole bunch of companies doing the exact same thing. Why are there 10 different brands of toilet paper? If there can be 10 different brands of toilet paper, you can do that thing, that's on your heart to do. If there can be, 15 different kinds of orange juice, it's orange juice, but you have these different companies, different companies of tomato sauce, so realize that there's something unique about your experience, your personality that the world needs. Somebody needs to hear your perspective and experience, whatever it is that you're going to share from you. That's the beauty of how God created humanity. There is space for you. Don't think, oh, there's no more room for one more singer or one more hairstylist or one more entrepreneur. There is space. There is room for you. And then the last big takeaway, Anthony, you said it, roots. Making sure that the roots of your spiritual tree continue to grow. And we all need that, whether we have a traditional or non-traditional career, so when temptations, challenges come, we're able to stay rooted and grounded. We can be like a tree planted by the water and stand. So we hope that that encourages you, that inspires you. Make sure you support, I can't say it enough, support. Anthony, he has his, sunsetfriday.com. Make sure you go there. Yep. All right. Micaiah, she has her IG. Make sure you find her. Asha, I don't know if you can quickly update your title.
Yeah. Oops. I was lacking. Sorry.
So just go ahead and put that up there. Make sure you take some time, find and follow all of these individuals. Let's support their businesses. Just a few announcements before we bring tonight to a close. Next week, there's going to be they're going to be talking to Pastor Mario Broussard and his wife about a movie that they're in. And Anthony, I'm going to pass the mic to you because I believe you're a part of this somehow. So go ahead and explain to us what that's about.
Absolutely. So good friend of mine, Pastor Mario Broussard and Natasha Broussard, have decided to step out on faith and share their entire story regarding the life and hope of their daughter, Braylee. It's a documentary. It's a full-fledged documentary with not just a fantastic story of hope, but they also get detailed with infertility, God producing miracles, as well as the tragedy that has happened, full details. And it's just a powerful testimony. It's like one of those entertaining story times you'll ever see in your life. The film itself will be released very soon, so you can stay tuned. I'm sure Pastor Broussard will tell you more about release dates when you speak to him next week. Yeah, that's the gist of it. You can get more information by going to myrayofhope.org. Again, that's myrayofhope.org. You get information on the film as well as the entire nonprofit organization they started about the film.
All right. Thank you so much, Anthony. So that will be taking place next week at 4 o'clock. So whatever if you're looking at us on Facebook or YouTube, just come right back here, 4 o'clock next week, and you'll get to hear their story, their journey, and find out more about the documentary, A Ray of Hope. So that's happening next week. We also want to let you know that tonight at 7:30, there will be a celebration for all of the graduates. So we encourage you to be a part of that as well. That'll be on Facebook Live, Hanson Place AYM. So again, thank you all for tuning in with us tonight. Be encouraged, be inspired, and let's go out and do what God has called us to do. Take care, everybody.